freaking goatee.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. And just for today...
Oh, you went and did it, didn't you?
May the force be with you.
What is it going to be all day long?
Oh, all day.
Sitting there, just holding
What?
Just... Oh, no.
Just hang on a sec. Zzz. Okay, it's just an Allen key.
Shaun is literally going to make me run off my camera and dig out.
Hold on. There we go. With a different color better?
Fantastic.
I got blue. I can go to red. Whatever we need. I can do it all.
This is your show, buddy. You can dance. You
Get
can cry if
crazy.
you want to.
I can dance if I want to. I like it. Yeah, so it's actually interesting. May the 4th. And before I go anywhere, I do want to make sure that we all like the show. We subscribe to it. Hit the notification bell so that you get all of the emails first thing whenever we get started, which is, well, a minute ago. So I have a topic that we could go into, but first I want to say, Jeff, thanks for showing up again, man. This is awesome. Good to see you.
Outside talking to my dog, who just gives me crap. This is like I gotta actually interact.
Oh, don't worry, we'll do that as well.
Oh yeah, but I'll feel like it's a heightened level.
Thank you, dog.
It's not as primal.
Yeah, it's not as personal.
Exactly. I have to go clean up his poop afterwards. So
That's right. You're on a more intimate basis. I get it.
That's about as personal as you can get right there.
Exactly.
I have a kind of a hilarious story about dogs and poop, but I can go into it in a different day, different time. But I wanted to talk today about something before we do that. I want to ask, any thoughts, anything off the top of your guys' minds, anything that you guys want to discuss, or any questions or thoughts before I dive into what we were going to talk about?
Yes.
Okay, what do you got?
And it's for Jeff, because I just came off of my own goofy little live IG potty that I do before I hop over here onto the-collective.ca. Yes. And an unusual day today, because it's rare that I know who the guest is going to be, because Chance Burles and I have this little game called Don't Ever Tell Me. And don't ever tell me what the topics are either. And
so it's not lack of preparation. It's actually
I don't need any preparation. I just love showing up and being the underperformer. So nice. I like the fact that I get to unwrap a Christmas present every day with, oh, that's the guest. Wonder what we're going to be talking about. So I got a little bit of a spoiler alert with the rock concert poster coming out just a little earlier than normal, probably because Chance Burles has something up his sleeve. Who knows what? But when I saw that it was you, I started chirping on my live IG potty about, Jeff Bosley, actor, Hollywood, big deal, God. Like yada, yada, yada. So it got all a little bit boring and uncomfortable after a while as I was patting on the back. No one really engaged in it.
Like, who?
But what I did want to say is this: where are you at right now in respect to things? I'm curious. I kind of think I know, but maybe there's been some new additions.
No, like since I was on last time with you guys, this is the weird thing is the higher you get in your rank, if you will, so to speak, the less you work, but the ones you get are giant. So it's a weird duality.
Right.
And since we spoke, I've had two, they brought me in for two giant, like these would have been the one you would go back on and talk about when they're like, so what was the one that made it? Kind of
one.
Yeah, the one. And I've had two the ones since we last spoke and didn't get them. I got feedback that they were great. They're just not what they're looking for, which is always the artistic thing that doesn't give us the answer. Like, well, but how do I fix it? And they're like, nothing. It's not what we want. One was for a giant video game IP, and one was for the main bad guy for an entire season. Another show that's already out on Amazon. So it would have been huge. At least a giant good paycheck, it puts food on the table. So stagnant, as Chancellor was talking before we started. So yeah, no, it's been pretty, it's peaks and valleys. And
well, that's what I thought. And the reason I asked the question specifically is because that's how I understood it. So I am up to date on what you've been into. Yeah. In fact, I think one of your most recent posts, either your most recent or the one prior to it, that was notable for me anyway, was where you not in depth, but generally spoke about a little level of disappointment in
Yeah,
how,
that was the one.
the
That
industry's
was,
hard and,
yeah,
yada, yada,
it
yada.
was, yeah, and it's for guys like us, and not to dwell too much on like, oh, it's all about Jeff's disappointment. Is it's weird because you want to tamper your expectations in a way. Like if you like for guys, if we want to, I always liken it to the extremes of something I could control. Whether that, and for me, that was my soft career. If I put in the work, I would get the results. And then that's the thing in this business you don't get. And so like you don't want to be jaded and dead and negative. But at the same time, if you get, I think I put in the post, like if you get up to an 11 of excitement and juvenile, childish like wonderment and all that really happy stuff, if you're at that 11 and then somebody else has the say that you don't get to continue at that, you got to come down from that. You can't stay in at 11 elation year in, year out, or you're on a drug probably. So that was what that post was about. Like I wanted this role. It was for a video game we've all played. Like it was like I was like, and it was like the main bad guy, and it was like I was like, oh my god, I want this so bad. And then that's what happens is you get too excited and then you got to come down from it. And that's what I'm not good at. I'm not good at guys. I think guys like us, Shaun, you're particularly, I think, a little bit better at it. I've noticed. I'm not good at self-talk. Like I look at everything like if I don't get something, it was a loss in the as a check in the lose column. And so like I can speak a lot of stuff, but I'm really bad at applying it. And so that was that latest post is
and it's super interesting to me that so in my live chat today, not only was I thinking when I saw you coming on, I started thinking of you, and coincidentally I'd picked up a book this morning. I randomly pick up books and just flick to any page and look for not inspiration, but just I look for it as a trigger to send me further downrange. In contemplative moments. And so I wanted to go deep on something. I wasn't sure what it was. My son had picked up a little book. It's like a $5 book. He grabbed it yesterday and it was just sitting on the coffee table. And I picked it up. I thought, oh, this is unusual. I've never, what's this all about? So I did one of these, ding, opened up the page. And on that page, maybe what I'll do is I'll grab the book in a sec. I'd never seen it before. And again, this is a random moment, but it showed two graphs. And this is what I talked about in my live IG chat today. One graph, or they were both the same graph, but with different outcomes.
Okay.
And the graph was laid out as such. It was to illustrate the depth of disappointment.
Oh, no.
And so it was a case of your hopes can be up here, or your hopes can be here. The outcome can be the same, but the difference between the two gaps is the depth of disappointment. So if you set your hopes up way up here and the outcome is there, that depth of disappointment, that delta or that gap is what throws people for a loop. And what I was saying was when I looked at that graph, maybe when I was younger, I would have looked at those two graphs and thought, oh, that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't. And here's why. And I'm not saying that I've got it right or wrong. I'm just saying that I look at those graphs and they don't make sense to me. Because there is no depth of disappointment for me. There's just disappointment. I don't magnify the disappointment. And here's why. Because I've freaking failed so many times.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because
I'm so used to having depths of disappointments that now there's no depth. I'm just disappointed.
So is it an on-off for you? Like I either succeed or I fail?
Yeah, no, it isn't so binary per se. It's just a case of, dang, I've got to try harder.
No kidding.
That's what I do.
So I would call that maturity. Like I would call that you've learned from that. And I would not be self-deprecating. I would say I've learned from what you're referencing for your learning experience, but I still have what you reference as a childish approach to it, where I still do have I do have a scale of disappointment that that chart speaks to, and right or wrong, it is exhausting because of that business. Not to put an excuse to it, but you go to 6,000 job interviews. Eventually, you don't care, which is managing that disappointment. But if you find that one job, you're like, oh God, this is the one I really want, and you like turn it all off and forget everything you said you wouldn't do. That's where that depth, that you're like, oh, that was an 11. So it's a weird duality, because I love how you approach it. Like, that's fascinating that you saw that chart and saw it, or it kind of chose to ignore that depth.
Yeah, the depth doesn't exist for me. And you know what I did call out in my live IG chat, by the way, not to say that, you know, somehow at the age of 27 I had everything figured out. I don't have anything figured out now. But I can speak to this and say that at one point in my life, like I had depths of disappointments, because I had some lofty goals, man. Even when I left the military, I had some pie in the sky stuff that I thought, yeah, I can do that, or, oh, that'd be awesome, or I'm going to create that, or I'm going to make the world a better place, or whatever was going through my silly little peanut. I set my goals so high and failed to achieve them that, and I mean big crash and burn efforts, you know, that those depths of disappointments, I've had so many depths that now depths isn't a big deal. It's just I've said this before. I feel that failure for me now is the gift. And I know it sounds so cliche, but I don't look at depth of disappointment. I just look at, oh, dang. All right. I'll do better on the next one.
Well, Go ahead, Jeff. You go ahead.
I'll wrap it up with it's some Shaun. I have a thing called my spectrum of suck. I even think I referenced it in the last show. It sounds macho, but you'll get it. Is that if we didn't have those failures, or those more and more extreme failures widening that depth, or for me, the spectrum of suck, that then makes things that you thought were like, you know, your first breakup when you were whatever years old, like you felt like your world was falling apart. You have enough breakups. It doesn't mean you're heartless, but you're like, I got this. Or your first loss in a sporting event or whatever. So I call it that spectrum of suck. And I always use it more referencing like silly movie making questions and interviews or whatnot. Is my spectrum of suck compared to somebody who's raised in the Valley in California and went to high school and then played pretend the rest of their life? I would like to think in a non-machismo way is quite wide. I'm not going to be bitching about my sore feet on set because of my spectrum of suck. Doesn't mean that person is a bad person. They just haven't had the depths of failures, or like they even talk about like in schools, no matter what the school is, the people that struggle on a topic or maybe you have to retake a course, they're probably the better ones at that course than the people that just clicked with naturally. Or the people that have to really work at a sporting event or a sporting task, they're sometimes better because they actually have to put the effort in versus people just naturally gifted and just like I knew Green Berets that could drink like fishes and go for runs the next day. And I had to earn those runs. You know? And so there's a difference. Eventually that caught up to them. Whereas me, I was like, oh, I've been having to train for this for a long time. So it's for me. So my spectrum of suck, your depth of failure. That's our XY axis for the day.
I like it. The it's actually quite interesting because I believe I was one of those people. I didn't struggle with a lot of things, especially in school, sports. I was able to pick stuff up really fast.
Yeah.
And it affected me to a point that I became complacent in terms of actually effort. Right. And I would just be, oh, okay, you want me to run? Cool, I'll run. Tell me to stop. Right. There was never I really got to work through this one. It was just, okay, cool. And now, unfortunately, or I can't say unfortunately, but I've learned lessons since then, but it affected my military career. It affected afterwards, affected how I dealt with my own health and all this other stuff. Because I was just, okay, like everything seemed to work out. And I never actually had to push that.
Yeah.
And I had a thought about this, the way you guys are describing it. The picture in my head is a pool. Like if you think about despair or disappointment or things like that, you think of it like a Olympic pool, right? You got a 3-foot shallow end when you first get started. But when you're young and you get tossed into the shallow end, that is super deep, right? There's no difference between the deep end versus the shallow end. It's just, oh my God. And if you never actually go back into the pool again, it doesn't matter the depth of the water. You will always expect the depths, right? That it's never ending. You've never touched the bottom. But the people that stay in the water, the people that continually go back to the water and experience hitting the bottom, going, oh, okay, I've reached the bottom. Cool. And then they go deeper and they hit the bottom like, oh, okay. And then they go deeper and deeper. And as to what Shaun was saying is that he's failed so many times, he's continually hit the bottom of the pool so many times that now when he hits the bottom of the pool, he's like, oh, okay, cool, I'm at the bottom, let's go.
Yeah, I've been here before.
Does that sound pretty accurate, Shaun?
Yeah, but the reality is that I have been there before, but when I started that I've been there before was a terrible swimmer that's really not good in water. And I remember selection, like there's times when you are near water in selection and it sucked, man.
What?
and I almost washed out because of water. And so water is a great analogy for some of the hardships in life, whether you're diving in the shallow end or the deep end, or whether someone pushed you into the swimming pool and now you're trying to figure out how not to drink the chlorinated water. So there's many ways that we could take the conversation in respect to a large swimming pool. But I'll speak for myself and say that, yeah, I started off sucking and eventually I figured out how not to suck. But the reality is that doesn't happen by itself. Now, it may initially, if you're a bit of a natural, give you a false sense of security that you can proceed forward effortlessly, just kind of like maybe you did, Chance Burles, just like a lot of people, just like me at various phases of my life. But I've said this to too many people now, mostly the athletes that I've coached, but it's always along these lines. You pay now or you pay later. You're always going to pay.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when do you want to pay.
Yeah.
It's best if you pay it with me right now, right here at the front end, where we earn it together. Because once I bounce, if you don't have that figured out, you ain't going to like the cost that you're going to pay on the back end. So let's get to work.
I like that.
That's a tough spot to sit in. The picture, I keep getting this picture in my head. The videos of like SEAL training when they're doing pool comp, and they got their hands tied behind their back and their feet are tied and they got to keep bobbing up and down in order to make it across the pool, right?
Yeah, it sucks.
And I can imagine, I've never done it, but I was thinking to myself, like, if you were to take just an average person and tie them up and then toss them in the pool, they're going to drown. Like they're going to freak out and drown. And some SEAL trainees do that as well. I'm sure with Green Berets, sure with JTF, all the selection processes that have to go through this stuff. I know there's combat divers within the engineers. They have to go through the same thing, and people wash out because of that. But it's a learned skill, and if you watch the people that have done it over and over and over again, they just jump in and they're totally relaxed. They hit the bottom. As soon as they hit the bottom, like, cool, up they go. They take a deep breath and they go all the way back down again, and then they come back up. And I was liking it, or the reason I think I have this image in my head is that if you don't know that there's a bottom, then you're going to drown, right? Because you're going to freak out. You don't know where the bottom is. But if you know that there is a bottom, it doesn't really matter how deep it is, because there's a bottom. You're just you're waiting for the bottom. Like, okay, we're here. And then you can move on. It doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't suck holding your breath or being tied, having your hands tied up, but it is manageable. There was
not.
That's true. Yeah.
And that is the way of the world.
Yeah,
some manage it and some don't. More often it's don't.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the case for the general population or for the normative values that are out there. I, as you were describing that, I see three kinds of people that are stepping into that pool environment. We'll call it life. There's the people who are completely oblivious to what they're about to face. And how they face it is completely up to them. Either they persevere or they don't. That's not important for this conversation right now. So there's people who show up unaware, and they either wash out or don't. Then there's a person who shows up prepared. They know what they're stepping into. They don't want to face an ambush. So they get to work months or years in advance, show up to the start line, prepared as best as they can. Then there's the third person who shows up, maybe heard a little bit about something, maybe didn't. But when they showed up, whether they were prepared or not is unimportant at that point, because the right person will look around and be inspired by what's going on around them. Whoa, we're getting pushed into the swimming pool, all of us at the same time. Hang on a sec. I am as well. Whoa, what's going on? Oh, he's okay. He's okay. They're doing this. They're doing that. Through osmosis, I'm improvise, adapting, and overcoming in real time. Bam. So there's that kind of person.
Yeah.
And so it's for all of us to understand where we are in those three different categories, you know?
Well, I think there's somebody who said, I truly love that. And I think it's funny because life and or how you handle those three scenarios, you can ebb and flow depending on the pool you're jumping into those various categories.
100%.
And like with us as younger guys, I saw something that was a little huggy, but I truly liked it. When you're younger and it's the first experience or the first whatever, it has that 11, if you will. You know, your first car. Oh my God! You know,
the greatest car in the world.
Yeah, I know. And you
first car crash.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And you know, you get used to it, so you manage your expectations. But also think about when you got your first car. Like you didn't care. Like you weren't thinking about like, oh, I need the new iPhone. I need like your expectations were so managed or so virgin, if you will, that the value of everything was huge. Your first girlfriend and everything. So like all that plays into time and experiences. It can backfire though, and you can not care or not have. You can actually slip into that one of those categories we're talking about, where I get a little whiny in the Hollywood world. And I transition to that little whiny person that doesn't learn about the ambush and doesn't care and gets jaded and whiny. Whereas in other aspects of life, I'm more I would like to think I'm the trainer ready to jump in the pool at, good to go all the time person. And then, so life experiences, how you handle, what you do with it up here is what person you can become. I wish it was static because I'm a very binary black and white thinker.
Well, you know what, buddy, you actually, I'm not saying you hit the nail on the head because I don't think we're hitting anything on the head right now. We're just chirping,
swinging at the fences at this
and we're having fun, but we are getting some things done for sure. So what's interesting to me is you are static. We're all static if we're not paying attention. And so, you've got to look at yourself to see if you are progressing. And if you're not, you've got to think about, why aren't I? And if you think, well, that's because I've slipped into a little bit of jaded mentality. Well, now you're not static anymore because you've identified the problem and now you can get to work. We're all static unless we're identifying the obstacles that we need to go freaking smash. And the obstacle is usually us, not the industry or not the car crash in front of us. We put the car into the tree. The problem is us. The problem isn't the car. The next problem is explaining it to your dad. And then, when you explain that, you can take the approach of, it was the car's fault, or Dad, I blew it. I'm going to make it right. I'll get to work. I'll fix this. I'm going to smash this obstacle and present a solution.
Well, there's that Stoic book, and I'm not Mr. Great at Stoicism, but I do find a lot of value in it. It's obstacle is the way, and that's without the obstacle, we all become Chance here, and we just excel at everything and never have a problem.
Yeah, dude, this is a natural. He's naturally got tattoos.
The obstacle is the way, right on my wrist. I have it.
Do you have that written on your wrist? The obstacle is the way.
Let's see if I can get it.
That's amazing.
Hold on, let me make myself big so everybody can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There
I can't even turn it right. There we go. Anyway, everybody can see it. But yes, it is.
Yeah, so I think it's key. It's how you identify that obstacle.
It is key until it becomes you're sort of like, the obstacle's the way, the obstacle's the way, the obstacle's the way, the obstacle's the way, the obstacle, without any thought. Just as I said a couple of days ago, when someone said to me, the obstacle is, and in my head, I started finishing the sentence, is the way, and gave it no more thought, as everyone does now. I would say that arguably every day that you see that tattoo, you're not thinking deeply about which obstacle you smashed today, or what obstacle is the way, or what is the way, or what is the obstacle, or what is the. You don't think it because it's right there. It's because how many times have you blinked in the last minute, Chance Burles? You
3.
Don't know because you've not been paying attention to the things that aren't right in front of your nose as important. So we can throw a tattoo on our wrist and it's important that day, but after that, it's just like blinking. Unless you are intentional about staring at your wrist 5 minutes every day, that tattoo doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
I do. And the funny thing is the way in which I utilize it is when I start to get, I guess, down on myself, or I start to have negative self-talk or any number of things, I usually end up going like this. And just sitting here like that, I can see it on my wrist. And so it is, it's a reminder to me of the obstacle is the way. So when I hit an obstacle where I start to go, oh, geez, like, oh no, how do I even get through? Where am I even going to begin? And then I can see it on my wrist. The obstacle is the way. And I go, oh, right. It's through the obstacle. And then I can start analyzing what the obstacle actually is. And I can start breaking it down into smaller pieces. And then I can start making my way through it.
I'd hate
But
to
it
tell you what I
is,
use
but
one of my tattoos for.
what do you got?
I said I'd hate to tell you what I use one of my tattoos for. I always forget how many S's there are in Espresso, Dio Presso Libere. Someone's like, is it 2 S's or where's the 2 G's? Like there are days I'm like, I'm not allowed to misspell that. I
Nice
really
spell
need
check.
to make sure I spell that right.
It goes into what I wanted to talk about today quite a bit. But before I get there, Carl says, forgot to say good day, gents, checking in. Good to see you, Carl. We're going to have a chat later. But this is what I want to talk about today, the story. And the reason I want to talk about it is because we all have stories. We all read stories. We all watch stories. We all develop our own stories as to why we do things, how we do things, all that stuff. And we're all affected by other people's stories, right? We can interpret and learn things from other people's stories. We can look at what not to do. We can look at what to do. We can do all kinds of things. And originally my thought was, we could talk about Star Wars a bit, but because it is May the 4th. But the thing is that everything we've talked about so far is a story. It is how we interpret the world in a way that we can understand. So no matter, you guys are talking about the depths of despair, and there's a graph and there's a book, and that might be the way that Shaun is interpreting it in his own head, the story that he's building around it. And then I'm hearing him say it, and I'm making up a story of people doing pool comp, right, and bouncing up and down. And then you have your own story of how that affects it. And I think that it's important to understand that the story that you tell yourself is going to shift and adjust and change, just like a story in a book or in a movie or anything like that. Any thoughts on that?
Yes. A book and a movie doesn't change. We do. Our stories that we can tell every day can change every day. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem. There's not too many good storytellers out there.
That's a very good point.
And I mean people who tell themselves their own story, mm-hmm. and I mean the people who tell other people's stories. So I'm looking at Jeff and I'm thinking, well, how coincidental. We've got a storyteller in front of us. He's called an actor.
It's almost like
using Jeff as the example.
Yes.
Jeff may have thought he was a storyteller a few years ago, but now Jeff is starting to realize, or has realized, or has a better realization than anyone who's going to be listening to this potty, in respect to what it takes to be a high-level storyteller. As an actor, you're telling a story without saying a word. As you enter the room, in order to maybe get the job, you're already telling a story about yourself. You've got to learn how to communicate at an extremely effective level immediately as a storyteller, as an actor, as Jeff. And as the minutes unfold, it's his job not only to tell the story, but it's his job to adapt to the storytelling moment based on what he sees in front of him. If it's a cast call or whatever it is, no doubt there's someone evaluating him, whether it's a camera or a director or a talent agent or whatever. I don't know. I'm not in Hollywood. I'm actually making up titles now. So there's someone evaluating Jeff, and Jeff is not simply bumbling through the world telling a story. He knows he's being adjudicated. He knows he's being evaluated. So all of Jeff's storytelling abilities are front and center. Jeff's doing his best. Mm-hmm. We don't do that in normal life. We only reserve our best for the moment that it matters, quote unquote, for that 3-minute cast call where you step into the room and you're on your best behavior, trying to tell your best story to the people who, quote unquote, matter. And then when we step out of the room, we drop the ball. The people that actually matter don't get our best stories. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's uncanny. Like, you always talk about when you're talking to your significant other, how the people that are closest to you in your life, you are possibly the realest version of you. Not to say that if I go to the gas station and I'm polite to the person at the counter, it doesn't mean it's fake, but I might be having a bad day, but I have enough, I don't know, I think adult maturity to act polite to a person, even if I'm in a bad mood. When I come home to my better half, she'll get the poo-poo lip or bad mouth. And ironically, it's the person you care the most about that you don't put that best performance forward for.
That should be the best movie ever, right?
They should, where you invert that. That actually could. Oh, I love that. I wish I could write. That'd be like Yes Man, but inverted.
For reals.
No Man. I like that.
Man. And then, like, you teach the people you love the most get the real you. And I think that's an interesting thing. While you were talking, Shaun, I was also telling a story in my head about when I was, there was a phrase, I'm sure it's in a lot of the branches, but we were beaten to death with, you're always being selected, you're always being assessed. So that just wears on your allostatic load. So you're just in this constant state of stress, but you're always on your best behavior, your best performance, because you're like, I have to be perfect all the time. And you kind of are perfect all the time, or as best as you can be. But then as a result, you come crashing and burning down, but like, I like that you said that. And I will counter a little bit.
Good. I love a good counter.
Well,
I love a good counter ambush.
But it's
bring it. I'm already throwing smoke and outflanking you. Bring it.
It's not that good, but you can use it and you can spin and throw back at me. Quentin Tarantino was talking about when he makes his movies, he doesn't spoon feed stuff like some movies I love. I love me a Marvel movie. There's no thinking. You just go eat popcorn and watch explosions. But he was talking about what's the movie with the Nazis with Brad Pitt?
Oh, yeah.
Inglourious Basterds.
Yes, he was talking about Brad Pitt's scar on his neck. He never explains that. In Pulp Fiction, they never explain what's in the briefcase when they have.
Dude, it's still haunting me.
Yeah, and he goes, and he had a beautiful thing, and I know you can spin this into real life, Shaun, where he talked about the three of us saw those two movies, and we each saw three. There were three movies, obviously not globally, but we each saw our own thing. And he goes, I'm never going to tell what's in the box or why that neck. And he goes, as a result, I just made three movies for these guys. And, that goes back to that whole, I'm sure it could be relative perspective. It's all relative and it's all perspective. That whole life storytelling being on your best behavior, because we can put our fronts to like I said, the gas station attendant. And that's one story. But I could have the worst mood in the world and Betty will know, it's an ironic opposite that it should be.
And unfortunately, you might not get a sequel.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
That producer's gonna can me if I keep treating her that way. Coming home in a bad mood.
It's a good point. It's first off, Dave says morning, Dave. Good to see you. Dr. C. Carlos is in the house. It says, very true. Stories for children allow them to process complex issues such as loss, examples of death of parents, mean people, etc. As adults, our clothes even tell a story. Yes. And I wanted to hit on this because I really like that last line, as adults, our clothes even tell a story. And it goes to your point, Shaun, is that we're always telling a story, but we don't always know, or we're not always active in the process of telling that story. We're just going about our lives. We're without any thought to it, without any process to it. The fact that I wore this morning, Northern Warrior, came from Corporate for Life apparel. Same thing as Shaun's shirt right now. We didn't plan that. It just happened, but it's part of the story, right? There's a reason why I wear a camouflage hat. There's a reason that says Tactical Trunk Monkey. Everything has a purpose within the story. But it has more important parts of the story if you actually intentionally put it in the story. Whereas if you are just randomly going about the day, then your story gets told without you, in my thoughts.
Well, that goes back to intention. And we're living in a world of this sounds like the old man thing to say, but of yes, we're telling that story and people are conscious of it, but the don't give an F attitude that permeates most people's days. For me, I would like to think I try to not give an F in select occasions where it's applicable. Like if I don't get a role, that's where I need to be that way, because I need to go, this is just the game. That's not my problem. Moving on, next target. So I need to have that attitude there. But I also don't want to have the kid at the counter at the gas station have that attitude towards me, because it's not the world I want to live in. And so like it's a weird, he doesn't give a crap about what his attire is or his hat or whatever. And it's that whole, it's a slippery slope of hyper self-awareness and wanting to be the master of your own story and the writer of your own story, if you will, and having that intention. But then the flip side of it is it feels like that is the audience, to use the metaphor. It doesn't feel like there's an audience for it, which makes people not care. Like if nobody cares if you dress right for the thing, why are you doing it? Are you doing it for you? Are you doing it for them? Are you doing it for an audience that doesn't exist? Like, does a play exist if the theater's empty?
Well, it does for me. I mean, like,
yeah,
these whole freaking podcast things, I sometimes step into them. Not this one per se, but my own goofy little IG chats. Like I step into them and hit record, and I don't know if anyone will ever show up.
Yeah.
And they do, which is weird, but they do. And so I start interacting with them, which is weird. And then I do that. And then, months later, I put on this t-shirt with a reason this morning, with intention, to your point, because I'm moving through a process which is called learning how to be a stage actor without being fake. So I'm trying to craft my authentic self while adding more nuance to it, so that I'm more authentically nuanced to people who are engaging with me without fake-eroniing it.
Yeah.
And so it's only been recently that I've been starting to intentionally consider, geez, maybe I should shave. Or maybe I should put on a clean t-shirt. Or I wonder if I should stand in sweatpants.
Nice.
Like I am now. Or maybe I should throw on a pair of jeans. And so my choices in respect to these kind of things are fairly recent to me, because I've been so focused on just trying to do my best for everyone else that I haven't thought about my, I'll say it, contrived appearance. And I'm not a contrived guy. So what I'm trying to figure out right now is how to present meaningful conversation with people and do it appropriately for me at this phase of my learning curve without being a fake Master 9000. I don't want to look like Brad Pitt because I don't want to look fake. But there's also the delta between the fakeness that will engage people who aren't used to guys like me, that may put the hook into them so that they'll get to meet me and my friends rather than just keep on being a scrub in dirty t-shirts for the rest of my life.
There's a Winter Storm got a comment here. Can we get a Shaun branded pair of sweatpants on the merch store?
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, Shaun I wear them a lot.
There's a great point that you guys remember the movie Bad Boys with Will Smith and I can't remember Martin Lawrence. There we go. Yeah. There's one point in the movie where Will Smith goes up to his apartment, whatever, and he comes back down. And he's wearing like a suit, and he's got the nice blazer with the shirt and everything. And Martin Lawrence is like, "What are you even doing?" And Will Smith goes, "Well, I like to look good." And Martin says, "For who?" And it makes this like joke, but it's never really answered. And I think the concept, it could be explored a little bit in the fact that if you want to look good because you want to look good, that's the story you're telling yourself, right? But if you are wanting to look good for anyone else, then it's not a true story at that point. You're just putting on a face. And it goes to kind of what you're saying, in that, if you give the gas station clerk a mask and you're like, "Oh yeah, hey man, how's it going? Nice to see you. Thanks for the change." Well, you can create an interaction that's beneficial. It's positive. But then you go home and you have to take that mask off. And you can still be honest and true to yourself without being negative in that sort of interaction, right? And so, it's a very good point in the fact that you have to balance that. You have to be able to, be true to yourself and actualize your feelings and actually talk about how, you had a rough day and things happen, so on and so forth. But then you have to choose to make it a positive experience and say, but I learned or that producer just didn't like me, or whatever it is, right? You can choose the story and how you want to interpret it and how you want to develop from it, at least in my mind.
Well, I think aren't there studies, I'm probably completely butchering this, but See, you went to Bad Boys. I went to Tango and Cash,
Oh,
where Stallone, he is dressed to the nines that entire movie, and he's like a detective. But I remember I even did this in college because I fell for, it might just be some, legend of folklore, dressing up for a final or an exam. Like if you like, I love that you said if you're doing it for other people. To me, that's the least pure form. That's when they make, to go back to my little industry of, that's when they make movies. Just they reverse design, and they're like, the audience wants this. All right, let's make a plot around that.
It sucks.
Exactly, and inherently it'll suck. The first two to pull it off, probably everybody's like, oh, dazzled by the BS. But then if they just keep doing that formulaic thing, i.e., dressing for the audience versus themselves, it becomes a pile of disingenuine crap. But I remember in college, I would dress up. I felt better. I might not have done any better on the dang test, but I felt better about it, and I feel better on Sundays when Betty and I go to mass. I take off the sweats. I don't have my own Shaun sweats yet, but I take them off and I put on.
They're actually Origin main sweats. Oh. So there you go.
I was gonna say I'm gonna have to ship them. But like I put on my nice jeans. I mean, I'm in Nebraska, so I don't need to put on a
good man. Fancying it up.
I'm not a 3-piece suit guy for mass.
Got a little bit of Bojangles on the back pockets there as well.
Exactly. I remember to take out my work gloves out of the back pocket.
Good man.
I was gonna say, if you're gonna get dressed up, you got to get the pocket watch with the chain draped across, because there's nothing looks as good as the pocket watch in the vest
for
pocket.
Our Christmas cards, that's what I did. I put on a dress shirt, and my jeans, and cowboy boots. I was like, and I literally thought, this is ironic for our conversation. I was like, how do I make this look fancier? I was like, I will put a vest on. That will look fancier.
Best move.
It's one of my favorite moves ever. Once you get the long sleeve shirt on, you can go from like working at the ranch, right, with the long sleeves down, and then you're like, you know what? I kind of want to go out for dinner, so you just put a vest on and you're ready. Good to go with that.
I want to look tough and casual. I'm going to roll the sleeves up now.
Exactly.
I want to look accomplished, but not too rugged.
Not too rugged, exactly. You gotta have an air of mystery in it.
Some stability, but yet an edge.
We got a couple comments here.
Before we bounce through, can we just pull that for a sec? Because I do want to make an observation. I'm curious as to what you two think. So, Jeff, you'd mentioned, like, I'm going to use Marvel movies as the example. Marvel movies are created for the audience to get what the audience wants. It's basically sugar popcorn. And so a good movie, well, for me, so this is where the distinction comes into play. I enjoy Marvel movies. I do, when I don't want to think. But for me, movies that matter are movies that make me think. That's not what I did when I was 17. I just looked at Star Wars. There you go, buddy. May the fourth be with you.
Yes.
And
also with you.
Namaste. We're grounded in the moment.
I'm serious. Every Catholic on the planet does that when you say may the fourth be with you.
So, when I was a young pup watching Star Wars for the first time, it was all flash and bang and sizzle. And that was making me happy. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't deeply think. Decades later, I've thought about a few things about that movie. And here's the deal. Movies that are written for the masses, because that's what the masses want, that can only last so long. Eventually, you've got to start thinking about the content that is being presented in front of you. And you've got to stop looking for the candy, and you've got to go start looking for the hard times that make you think in a movie or in life. And so the idea being, taking the movies, as you mature as a person, decade after decade, you can't end your day with the mindless popcorn. You can't spend your entire life having someone present you the movie where you don't think. Even if it's not movies, pull that analogy out of the window. Yeah. You've got to engage in life more than life telling you what to think. You've got to think. So you've got to pursue the uncomfortable movies. You've got to pursue the uncomfortable moments. You've got to pursue the weird looking vest, not your favorite vest, the vest that makes you uncomfortable and you're not sure if anyone's going to like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to my favorite diner and I'm going to try that. I've never been brave enough to wear that vest to my favorite diner. What will they think? Freaking wear it. See where it goes.
Mm-hmm. I could not agree more. You got any points on that, Jeff, before I got some comments here?
It's funny because I will to make up a word, metaphorize all the worst movies as not because I know what I'm watching. Like I call them popcorn movies. It's popcorn and sugar. I love that. It's you're not going in there to think, but I can go watch Captain America and I don't do drugs, but I feel like I find an inner like pot smoking hippie. I'm like, no, here's the theme here. Overcome.
right.
But that's not who they made it for because they'd go bankrupt counting on those 1 in 10 people to find meaning in Iron Man. You know, it's like, whoa, take it down a notch, bro. But it's interesting that you kind of extrapolate that to the reality of kind of complacency. And I slip into it too, especially I think when people have less to do, particularly service members that kind of lose purpose and all those cliche yet accurate things, is you have to search out that stuff. And like to go to the metaphor, like The Godfather wouldn't be made nowadays because it's not made for the masses.
Yeah, right.
Some of my favorite movies that truly, whether they make me tear up or I get just some sort of visceral, I hate that phrase, but visceral, like, God, yeah, thing, those don't exist anymore. And then we get numb to that. And like you said, I think nowadays it's more on the individual to mitigate that because we're in such a, I don't want to be the old man blame the internet thing or social media, but we're in such a here's stuff world where you just have to sit back and take the gastric tube of information and do nothing. If you don't want to, it'll still come to you. Yeah. Where you actually had to go to the theater, you actually had to go to experience the world. If you wanted to go experience Ireland, you had to go get a dictionary or go to the library and use the Dewey Decimal System. You know, you couldn't just sit back and eat popcorn or eat, drink a beer and get on the internet and look at videos of Ireland. You know, you actually had to experience life. And I think it's uncanny how that ties into crappy movies now. That's very fascinating.
It's very true. And, one of the best parts about actually experiencing things is the fact that you've actually experienced them.
Yeah.
Right? And
that old lady, she's at like a parade or something, and there's an old lady, and like it's like they're at some sort of fence keeping the crowd away, and it's this old lady, and she's just sitting there looking, and everyone around her is easily half her age or more, and they're all with their cell phone, and she's just taking it in. She just has her
enjoying that moment
here.
So using that example, Ireland, which is where half of my family's from, I've been there about too many times to count, double digits, and was just there last summer. And so here's the thing about experiences. I look at experiences now as for other people. So I can't talk to you about Ireland if I haven't been there.
Yeah.
And I've been there enough that I can talk about Ireland. But at a certain point, my story ain't for me, it's for you. It's for someone else, where I can, with some relevancy, speak on the subject or to the subject or about the subject, rather than talk about the half-watched documentary on Ireland that I almost finished before I fell asleep with my tub of popcorn in my lap. The idea being that you do have to go out and experience life in order to create the story. If you're creating a story built on someone else's documentary story, get with the program, shake your head, and go out and forge your own story. Create life. Don't let life show up and be fed to you. Go pursue so that you've got a story to tell with some relevancy, because eventually the story won't be about you anymore. It'll be about the story that you can tell others to engage them in their stories.
Exactly. Yes.
On that note, I got to ask you guys, favorite Star Wars movie? I got it.
It's a problem for me. I have to ask my boys every time, boys, what's your favorite? They are Star Wars freaks. They were raised that way, and they are heavily into it. So every once in a while, when I'm in the mood for a popcorn movie, I'll have to look at my boys and say, boys, which one should I watch? Which one do you think is the best if I want to focus on ... Yeah. So it's been this, it's been that, it's been the other thing. I've gone through all of them, and I've been told all of them are favorites, and I don't even have a favorite anymore.
That's kind of a cop-out answer.
It is. But honestly, so here's my truthful answer so that it doesn't seem like a cop-out. My favorite movie is the one that matches up with my mood, but not my mood as in I'm moody. It's in my mood as to what I want to contemplate. Do I want to think about good and evil? Do I want to think about redemption? Do I want to think about betrayal? Do I want to think about an ambush? Do I want to think about the relevancy of the long game? It's my mood. It's what I want to think about, not am I sad? It's about where do I want to go with this time that I'm going to invest in this moment. My time is not about how much popcorn I can gobble. It's about how I can learn and then provide for others.
I like that. I like that a lot. So I've watched Star Wars many times.
Dude, you've got your own lightsaber.
I got
Come on.
It's actually Kinley's, but it is. I'd have to say, out of all of them, the one that I could watch over and over and over and over again would be Return of the Jedi. And that would be because it is. I think the thing that I like about it is the fact that it is
one sentence.
It's the completion of the story.
Oh, okay.
And that's the big one. Empire Strikes Back is a really close second, though, because that is I look at the original trilogy as one story. I mean, it should be in my mind, and so it plays that way, right? There's a big climactic event at the end of the first one, and then you hit this massive downfall. And Empire Strikes Back is all about getting constantly bombarded by stuff. You're getting hit this way, that way, this way. You're getting
good,
all kinds of bad things. Exactly. But at the end of the movie, you're just left with all these questions, and everything's kind of up in the air, and you're like, oh my God, what do we do? And then with Return of the Jedi, it is much more, it sums it up, I guess. That's what I really enjoy about it, is that it's the completion of all of that. But that's my
funny,
because
that's the least fascinating thing to me. I'm not interested in the completion. I'm interested in the puzzles, And
this is why I think Empire Strikes Back is such a it's really hard to make the decision on that one. But
I'm not saying you made a good or bad choice. I don't even know. I've already established. I don't even know what my choice is. I don't even have a choice because it's based on what I want to think about at the time. By the way, if anyone out there thinks that every time I want to consider like victory or consider betrayal or whatever, I've got to sit down and watch a 44-hour-long movie marathon, that's not how it works for me. Like, if I want to think about it and I'm in the mood to watch Star Wars, I only need to watch some of it.
Yeah.
Maybe even 15 minutes, man. Like, we don't have to invest in a full movie every single time we have an idea. There's not enough hours in the day. You can use movies as a storytelling device to help you think more deeply about the world around you rather than an escapist moment to not think about what the story is. We, as a storyteller, Jeff as a storyteller, has probably watched more movies than I have, or has been involved in more movies. Well, all the movies. I've been involved in no movies. So you've been involved in the storytelling game much more deeply than I have. So you understand this concept more than anyone on this panel for sure. The story is important, but the story doesn't show up at your feet. You've got to go create your own story in order to have a story to tell. Once you've got the story to tell, you've got to learn how to tell the story. The only way you can learn how to tell the story is to be around good storytellers. That takes time. That takes, believe it or not, intergalactic travel to tell the Star Wars story. But in our planet, it requires more travel than just in your own basement. You got to go out into your neighborhood. You got to go out into your town. You got to go out into your country. You got to go out into the world to be able to tell a good story.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, I would finish off with that, but there's some comments that I want to go through.
That was a fade to black moment.
So it would be, right? This is what I was saying. He needs a mic to drop, but he doesn't. He used to do the whole.
I'm just trying to squeeze a quick one in before Winter Storm showed up.
You got okay. Well, a quick one was like 10 minutes, but whatever. Winter Storm says development comes from learning.
It was 3.
Learning comes from experiencing things, and experiencing things comes with victory and losses, which I think is a great layout. Doc Carlos says, yes, it is true. This is what you were talking about, Jeff. When students dressed up for exams or quizzes, they did and took better notes when listening in class. So 100%. I think that goes with,
baby.
Yeah. Look good, feel good, right? If you're feeling good when you get there.
Feel good. That's a phrase that I think has simply replaced intention.
Yeah.
It's a quaint phrase. Everyone can hook into it.
It
Oh
is.
yeah, if I look good, I feel good. That's not what's happening.
No, but it's
Before
why
you
you
before you
root,
think
it is
about
intention.
which tie to wear, you're in the game. You've got intention. Oh, it's game time.
Yeah, purpose. And I like that.
100%. Winter Storm carries on. Star Wars is either the story of an entitled farm boy who is the weak link in a ragtag group who ends up kissing his sister, or it's an epic tale of discovery with loss and a heroic ending. Up to you.
Yeah, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. But this is a great point.
Farm boy.
So Dr. C says it's all about perception, isn't it, Winter Storm? Very true. Many superhero movies are based on the hero's journey, which is 100% true.
Yeah.
But the key, I think, right in the beginning of that is it is about perception. How you look at it, how you interpret it, how you read the story of your own life, of other people's lives, how you actually engage with it. I think that's the important part. So we are just about at time here. Those are all the comments I have. Any final thoughts? Anything off in the back of your brain there, Jeff, that you'd like to discuss?
I'll say it. I'm actually going to take this like as almost like an audience member at the Shaun and Chance infomercial day. Like it is a weird little slippery slope of taking these things that inspire us, these stories, whether the story is a literal or metaphorical story, and actually doing something with it. And I know I keep sounding like the old man blaming the internet, but it is something I need to rewire myself, because I was thinking both of you were talking, and I think a lot of people need to do this. And it definitely is a generational thing for sure, where it ties in with the internet too, is that, for example, I could watch a Rocky workout montage the first 5, because but to go back to the Dewey Decimal going to the library thing, I can only see it in the theater, consciously plugging in the VHS tape. And I literally used those feelings of motivation that I got. And I didn't think about like, what would Rocky do while I'm sucking in selection? But I used that mentality that I took from the story and applied it to my real world Shaun experiences, if you will. So that's the sweet spot, is to take that, whether it's a book, a motivational fictional character, a parent figure, a father figure, an older sibling figure, whatever, and take that and then go and have those experiences. And I think we're living in a world a little bit where it's not balanced. It's more experience through proxy versus experience through actual physical thing. And that's a thing I've since forgotten, is I could watch the Rocky movie or whatever and take that moment that, where I got goosebumps and go, Jeff, Rocky sucked it up. You can suck it up, or whatever that is, and take it into the real world, where now we don't have to, so to speak, go into the real world. And it's an easy complacency to slip into. So I'm going to take that away just personally today, is like, what was it like when we were kids and watched something that inspired us? We could conquer the world, and we don't need to conquer the world every day, but it definitely had a different perception.
Yeah, could not agree more. I was just thinking of like the first time I think I watched Star Wars at home, once it was on the VHS. All right, it was actually, I think it was the Betamax back in the day. Was my brother and I immediately ran outside. We picked up the sticks and we were like, we were in the story. But it does provide a moment of motivation and development. So I think it's awesome. Shaun, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do. And so real quick, last night I watched the new Dune 2 trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer yet, are you kidding me? I name an ass that needs kicked today. Someone's going to get their ass kicked after watching that trailer. And so here's what I saw in the trailer. And I would encourage everyone to go watch the trailer that just got dropped. At some point, he jumps up on a sandworm and he's riding that thing like a freak, like it's the biggest sand surfboard you've ever seen in your life. But it's the build up to the moment. It's the anticipation. It's the emotion. It's the simple look from one person to another when they lock eyes and know, oh, it's going to get done. I don't know what it looks like yet, but it's going to get done. And so the emotion that they put into that trailer obligates me today to not only go kick ass, but to inspire someone while I'm doing it. And that's sometimes the message that's missed in movies. We get inspired, And then we hold it off there. We don't go one level higher. Take that inspiration to drive your own inspiration, but to inspire others.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. And, you know, one of the benefits with that is that you get to tell the story. So tell your story and make it wicked. And that will inspire the people around you to be more wicked. And then you have a whole bunch of wicked people doing wicked things.
Wicked.
So, you know, thanks again, Jeff, for being here. It's been great chatting with you again. Again, open seat anytime. If you got time, you're in.
If you're not too busy dominating Hollywood.
Too busy, exactly. Or, you know, being a image and voice for a new video game character or anything like that, because that would be what you would be a really awesome villain for a video game. So
you will be.
Will be. Ooh, yes, indeed, will be. And as we all, you know, learn how to develop our own stories, as we all build upon our stories from the past, and we can grow our stories continually in the future, you can all do that with us here on The Collective every day. Chimo.
Chimo.